And with that, I believe I am recording. Yes. Okay. This is gonna be kind of a weird one because I was on my way to sleep, or what, rather, I was on my way to bed. But then I checked Delfruit, and then on there, I read a review that kind of upset me. A review of this game, and I'm not gonna talk about the review or like set the record straight or anything, but it actually like prompted me to do a commentary video. I'm gonna do the T stage. Let's see, that would be over here. Just because sometimes it frustrates me, and like this is like a natural thing. People are gonna, some people are gonna like your game, some are not gonna like it, and people are gonna have different interpretations of stuff in the game. They're gonna experience the game in different ways, and sometimes ways that you didn't anticipate. So, like it's fine that some people might not describe the game in a way that I, as the person who made the game, would sort of subscribe to. But like I said, it made me want to do a commentary video, because it made me want to talk about how I view the game. Because like whenever I read a review or hear someone talk about it, and when they're focusing on like the gimmicks, and they're focusing on the design, like does the needle flow well, stuff like that, to me it's just like it's just missing the point. Like that's not what I try to do here. I didn't try to make a nice feeling needle game. Okay, that's all I wanted to say, and I hope I can sort of point to some examples of other stuff that I try to accomplish. But also another thing that I wanted to talk about, and I don't think that I've touched on this in any of the earlier videos, but I'm not sure. But it's like the most common question that I get with regards to this game is how I found the music. And I just wanted to say a couple of things about that. So this game has somewhere around 90 songs, and most of them are by different artists. And I don't know, like if I just say it like 90 songs, it doesn't seem like that much. But it is definitely like a larger soundtrack than the vast majority of fan games. And I think like just by sort of what I gauge regarding like people's music interest in the community, I think a lot of people would kind of struggle to find 90 songs by 90 different artists. But the reason that I've been able to do that, well, some of the reasons. So the primary reason, which might be kind of obvious, is that I listen to a lot of music. Like it's probably my biggest interest is music. And I listen to a lot of music for the purpose of gathering a soundtrack. And excuse me. And that's like it's not really helpful advice to anyone who want to collect songs, but I mean that's sort of how I did it. I listen to music on Spotify. I have a playlist on there called Needle. So whenever I come across a track, and usually like they're instrumental songs that I come across that I think, oh, like this would be fun, or this would feel nice to platform to, or this would create a cool atmosphere or something. I just put it in the playlist. So I just have like a lot of songs, and even when I'm not working on a game, I'll save songs for future projects. And also, like before or during making this, and like in maybe like the last month or two before release, I was doing like an internship as a part of my education. So I was teaching at a school, and to get there was a 1.5 hour commute, like one way. So I spent 3 hours every day riding the bus and riding the tram. And during that time, I just like went through album after album after album, mostly of like ambient music, but it was like this soundtrack has a lot of ambient music and a lot of IDM stuff. So that's like mostly what I listen to. I mean, that was awesome, but it's not really something that I'd recommend. Like listening through any ambient record, it's gonna be like in 99% of the time, it's gonna be pretty hard distinguishing one song from the other, because that's not really the point of that sort of music. It's more like a setting a tone, or like creating a feeling or an atmosphere, or taking you somewhere, more so than like being catchy and having songs that stick out. But anyways, that's how I did it. But what I wanted to say, to like give some advice potentially, I don't know if this is helpful to anyone. But two things that you could do. So one is like get Spotify if you don't have it. It's free, although I recommend getting premium to skip the ads. And like if you have an artist on there that you like, that you know, like for example, a lot of people like Aphex Twin in the community. You can just look at like the tab with related artists and just click on them and like check maybe the top tracks, and then like keep going, like check the related artists to that artist, and like the further you go, the more obscure the artists are gonna be. And I think that's like usually something kind of valuable, to pick songs that people haven't heard before, so that people don't already have associations with the music that you pick. Although some people will definitely disagree with that matter, but yeah, you can sort of go down like the rabbit hole and like find some really obscure artists. I mean, obviously there are like fucking millions and millions of artists on Spotify, so there's so much just undiscovered little hidden gems there. And the other like tiny little advice I would get, so, and the reason I'm bringing this up here is because this song is an instrumental cover of a Sufjan Stevens song that I like. Sometimes I just like to look up instrumental versions of songs that I like. Like this is by some random person with a piano on YouTube, but I thought it sounded really nice. But yeah, other than that, I don't know. Like have an interest in music. Okay. Yeah, this was the last area that I made, I believe. But I mean, the idea was basically to have, I'm gonna turn the music down slightly, to have Dotkid and the triple jump. And the sort of like a rough idea was that you would alternate between them. And I also had the idea of getting the power-ups by shooting various boxes or other objects. So that was sort of the idea, as the starting point for this. I think like that aspect of the stage is kind of underdeveloped. I think that there's definitely like way more you could have done in terms of like the switching between Dotkid and like getting triple jump and stuff. There's certainly more interesting pathing that you can do, where you have to like get a power up and then maybe like remove a power up for some reason, and like maybe I could have made more variations of the power ups and stuff like that. So in that sense, I think this stage could have been better. But this stage like really has other qualities that makes me very fond of it. And one of those qualities, which I think this screen probably illustrates the best, is that it's a very playful stage. Like a lot of like little things here. I mean, like quite visibly, like there's the arrows showing you the way, which is something I added pretty late because there was some part, I think, where it was kind of ambiguous where you had to go. But I also thought that the stage looked a little bare, so I wanted to add more elements that would catch your eye. And then, of course, like there's the guillotine jump, which is I think pretty memorable, even though the jump in itself is like not, it's nothing special at all. And then you have like the, you know, this part with the, yeah, of course. I'm gonna address this in a second. But yeah, the conveyor into the penalty room. So there's just like a general, like I said, playfulness here. And it's present in other parts of the game too. But for me, this is sort of a new approach to level design, I think. Where it's like, you can just like put little stuff in. It doesn't detract from anything. And it just brings more character. And I think this definitely was a takeaway for a lot of people for their own games. Like I feel like we see way more of this stuff in the community now. Where like people add like little extra details, I guess, and like little quirks to the level design. So it's not all about making the satisfying movement, I guess. Oh yeah, let's let's briefly touch on this. Good needle, because I didn't make it. So this is like how do I put this? This like walks a very fine line. Putting this in the game walks a very fine line between being humorous and being spiteful. It's like definitely a little bit of both. But basically, what this is so a person in the community did not like the triple jump area in one of my previous games called 50 Shades of Crimson. And they felt like they could make a better stage with triple jump. And so they made this map in JTool, I believe, and they called it Kale Needle, but good, because I made it. So obviously, like that kind of, when I found out about that, that definitely provoked me. And then I thought it would be like really funny to put that screen, because to be frank, like I was not very impressed with the design here. So I thought it would be funny to put it in my game as a penalty room. Yeah, like I said, there's definitely like a fair bit of spite there, but the person in question like took this joke very well, and we're on good terms. So that's all. Water under the bridge and all of that. Anyways, it made sense to say something about it at least. Here's another thing that I want to talk about. This I think is also like a new kind of approach to level design that I started getting into maybe with Haystack 2. It's like I think when you're designing Needle, or like designing anything, probably you're always dealing with a bit of problem solving. You have to like you might want to make a screen play well, and you might have like certain ideas or concepts for jumps, and then you have to like figure out how to make those jumps possible and not allow alternative solutions to the jump. not have skips essentially. And then you might also want the jump to look nice, so then you have like another factor that you have to add in. And here we sort of ran across the problem, and I think this is something that Zero remarked on in testing, is that when Dotkid is introduced, which is here, the player has not been sufficiently trained, I guess, in the Dotkid mechanic, and then you're immediately thrown into like these pretty precise jumps, which might feel kind of counterintuitive. So we thought, okay, so that's like the initial problem, is that it's just too like introduced too quickly. And that seemingly has like a pretty easy solution. It's like, okay, well, maybe we need to introduce it earlier. Either that or like we make this part easier. But this stage is kind of short as it is, at least this part of the stage. So I didn't want to compromise these harder parts. So then, like, okay, well, we need to introduce Dotkid earlier. Oh, fuck you. And I thought, okay, so maybe put it here. But I also didn't like the idea of like getting into the stage and immediately being greeted with Dotkid. I wanted that to be more of a surprise rather than like the defining theme of the stage. So that like didn't work. And then I had this screen, which I obviously like, oh, I don't want to redesign this. I think this is a really cool, memorable screen. And then you get here and it's like, okay, well, I mean, I like the aesthetics of this screen quite a bit. I don't want to tamper with this. And I actually like kind of struggle with this problem for a bit. It's like, okay, well, where do I put it then? And I think this is like an example where your thinking or like your approach to problem solving is kind of constrained. You have these like base premises that you're not realizing that that you have. And the premise that I had was that, oh well, I only have these 3 vertical screens to work with. Where do I put it in these 3 screens? But of course, then like if you can sort of remove yourself from those that like boxed in thinking, you might realize like, oh wait, I could just add a warp here. But then it seemed ugly, or like it seemed strange to have a warp. Like, should the warp have been here? Like, nah, I mean, that would be kind of weird. Like you're jumping up and then it takes you into the Dotkid rooms. And then I sort of like, oh wait, like, oh, I can put the warp here. So like you get to save first, and then you find the warp. But then we ran into like the additional problem, and this is like maybe a tinier problem, but like once you get out of here, this was before I added this line. So when you get out of here, like where do you save? And that might seem like, oh, this has the most obvious solution, like, oh, put the save like right here in front of you. But I like did not like at all the aesthetics of that. But I also didn't like the fact that if there was an additional save here, that would sort of reveal that something happens, like when you walk right here. And I didn't want that. So that's when I thought like, oh wait, I can put a like really tiny like sliver of a block here that you can shoot through if you stand next to it. Yeah, it's like a very tiny thing. But I hope I sort of got the point across that it's like the approach to problem solving here is sort of I think it's sort of unorthodox in a way, even though like the solutions are very, very simple in a way, like, oh, we just put an invisible warp. Yeah, it's just not the conventional way to tackle this sort of problem, and it requires some practice to get yourself into that mindset where the range of solutions for a problem gets broader. And what I ended up with here, I think this part is super cool. I love that you're like walking here. It's like in a weird like game logic way. It feels like it makes sense, like you're entering some mini world here. And I love the aesthetics of it. I like that you're shooting through here. It's almost like a little puzzle that you might feel good about solving when you figure that out. And I think this is just like memorable and charming and gives this part of the stage a lot of character. So I think that like the approach to problem solving that I'm talking about is not only does it solve the initial problem, but it also creates design that you wouldn't get otherwise. Like this is not like a forced idea. It's just me solving each problem that comes along the way, and then I end up with something that I would never have thought of otherwise. So that I think that's kind of cool. Yeah, there's not gonna be a whole lot to say about this. I think I made these screens in like an hour or two. Making just a regular Dotkid needle with nothing else going on is like the easiest thing in the world, because nothing's been done in the realm of Dotkid. Like you never feel like you're just repeating what's been done already. Every jump, there are like, I mean, there's so many more jumps that you can make because the Dotkid is so much smaller. But yeah, I try to like, instead of like doing much with the design, I think the design is super basic here. I try to make each screen have sort of like a different visual theme or style, I guess. But yeah, the levels design is there's not a whole lot to talk about. We're not gonna talk about what's up there either. But yeah. But I like this, and I think for the purpose, like, so these screens are just an introduction to Dotkid basically, and not like for someone who hasn't done Dotkid before, because almost anyone who plays this game will have done Dotkid before. A bit more so like warming up, because you might not have done it recently. But yeah, okay, so gonna move on a little bit. This jump up here in like the middle before the drop, it's like one of those times when I think this jump I might have prioritized aesthetics a little too hard, because I think it looks cool that you're meant to go through this really tiny tube as the Dotkid. But it ended up being too hard. Anyways, and yeah, the rest of the stage is like very standard stuff. Here I'm like, okay, well, we're back to just normal needle. And again, like, I'm a little regretful. I think I should have tried to push the gimmicks a little harder here. But then again, like, I mean, maybe this is nice. Like, it's not every screen has to be sort of convoluted, like semi-puzzly, several gimmicks, clever pathing. Sometimes you can just like throw in sort of semi-interesting standard needle into the mix, I guess. So I don't dislike it, but like sometimes I just can't help but think like, oh, like that this took no effort making. Maybe I didn't really try my hardest to make the best out of that screen, I guess. I should take I'm gonna turn God mode on and take a quick detour to the secret. This is one of my favorite secrets. It's down here. I don't think. What do I want to say? One thing I want to say, I really think this is like the ideal way, for me anyways, to design fun Dotkid needle. I think this like style of Dotkid needle, where the jumps are not overly precise. Like these jumps are definitely not like squished to the point where they're like a one-to-one representation of, you know, what this jump's equivalent would be as a normal sized kid. Like they're just way more lenient than the equivalent would be. Oops, I had got mode on anyways. And I think that is like the way to go, because I think Dotkid needle really shines when it makes you feel like you're playing really well. Like you do this drop and it just like seems like it would be a hard jump, but actually like you can probably, if you had a little practice, you can probably do that like literally every time, because it's not precise enough to where there's variance in your success rate. So yeah, I think this is like a very good style of Dotkid needle, where it's like not precise, but instead the saves are long. So like personally, I super enjoy grinding this save. I find it very satisfying and yeah, engaging in all its simplicity, I should add. Also, one of the best songs in the game. How many spikes did I hit along the way? Who knows? Okay. But yeah, so I mentioned it twice now that I thought this stage kind of underutilized the gimmicks. It's the ugliest screen in the game, by the way. So that's why I added this sort of appendix to the stage. That was one reason, anyways. So I made this a little later than I made the first portion of the stage, because I just had that thought gnawing, like, I should do something more. I should explore these gimmicks a little further. And yeah, and this part of the stage I think worked out super well. Very happy with this, with these 4 screens or 5 screens or whatever it is. And also, besides just wanting to explore the gimmicks more, there's something like very, very appealing to me about a really long stage where it's sort of, you get the sense of like really going on an adventure. Like by the end of it, you barely remember where you came from. So it sort of disrupts the flow of the game in a sense, because you might almost like forget that you're on floor 31 and you're exploring this hub and you're like finding new locations, because you've been in this stage for so long. And it might sound like that's a bad thing, but it's definitely appealing to me anyways. It reminds me of the feeling in RPGs sometimes, where it's like you might explore a cave or explore some kind of dungeon, and you're going deeper and deeper, and you might sort of be driven by greed, like you're finding new loot, but you're also like barely hanging in there. Your resources are running thin, and you keep thinking like, oh, I should turn back and like restock and regroup and sort of like get my bearings together, or whatever the expression is. I think I had that experience in Minecraft, like way back in the day when I played Minecraft. But yeah, sort of, I like that feeling of like you're in too deep, but you can't bring yourself to stop. In this case, of course, like you're not finding loot, and you're not given the option to turn back. But yeah, sort of a similar feeling anyway. Yeah, I don't think I need to say much. I think so. These screens, they do sort of like somewhat explore the gimmicks a little more, like quite simplistic ways. But like here, you're doing the gravity flips, and they give you 2 jumps back. So that's sort of like a different way of using the triple jump gimmick. But like each screen here really, they all really differ from one another. Here's like the Sudoku screen. So this was sort of like the pure form of my early idea for this stage, where for each quadrant in this Sudoku grid, you get a new combination of gimmicks. So you start off with Dotkid, and then you get normal kid, but you get triple jump, and then you have triple jump along with Dotkid, and then you get the idea. And I think, I mean, it's hard. It's always hard working with this sort of confined space, like to really like make an excellent screen, or a screen that's really fun to play, I should say. You would need just a larger screen. But I still think that it's kind of a cool concept, at least. And I mean, I like this screen too. I enjoy playing it. And also, here's like another example. I think I would call this an example of the playfulness that I mentioned earlier. And here's like, it's like a super minor thing, but sometimes I feel like people just don't do these minor things. And of course, like the thing that I'm talking about here is having the same jump as the first and the last jump, with like sort of the basic idea being that if you grind the save for long enough, you're gonna be very consistent at the first jump, and then it's like a consistency test right at the end. And I think that's just like a cute little idea, and I love seeing that sort of stuff in games myself, because I think at least like I would spot something like this, and I would get an idea of like what the maker was going for. Like, oh, they're doing something that that is not just fucking design. Where like, oh, I'm building like jumps that feel good, and I'm stacking them one after the next. Like there's something else going on here also. That's one of the ideas, and I'm probably talking about this in every video, but like I just want to hammer that idea in. Like there are different ways that you can present your needle, and like different ways that are not just trying to make like the most satisfying left right jump, like re-jump weave. I don't know. There are like so many more like tiny things that and at least to me they're way more interesting, because the movement set is so limited. Like doesn't matter like how fucking convoluted your jump is. Like it's, yeah, it might be satisfying, but it's never gonna be something that we haven't seen before, or at least like a veteran needle player hasn't seen before. So it's never gonna like fully engage them, I think. But undoubtedly, like a lot of people don't think this way, and they want sort of the same thing over and over. And maybe I would have wanted that too. And I don't mean this in like a condescending way, but I think it is sort of like an age thing. I am older like than most of the people in the community. Maybe you grow less patient with that sort of stuff when you get older. I don't know. Dumb and unnecessary speculation. Let's carry on. Yeah, okay, so here I'm like playing around a little bit with vines, like I'm trying to do something that I haven't done before with Dotkid. Yeah, the middle part is kind of like, it's not great, because you usually don't feel like you're in control. It's more like, well, you get the right alignment and then you just spam. but it's also like it's something different. It's maybe a little bit memorable. You know, there's a way to defend any jump. That's not really my point. Maybe that jump is indefensible. But yeah, again, I think this save kind of slow paced. Like we had this save, which might have required a little bit of thinking, like sort of semi-slow paced, kind of a very conceptual screen. We started out with like a very flowy screen. Like this is like non-stop movement. You never touch the ground. You have to constantly be on your feet. A lot of weaving left and right, preserving your rejumps, etc. And then you have this screen, which is, did I say it already? But yeah, it's slow-paced screen. More like jumps that you might want to stop and sort of set up and like think about. Not at all like good flow, but it's not going for that. It's going for something else, and that's the point. No one has to like that, but to go back to like where I started this video, I mean, and I'm sure anyone who's like made anything that is significant to them feels this way, but yeah, I feel misunderstood sometimes. Largely, I feel understood. So I think the reception to this game has been very positive overall. But it's the naysayers that you pay the most attention to, that get under your skin. Yeah, I don't know what to say here. Play around a little bit more. Like the mid jump Dotkid is kind of a thing that I didn't do prior. Here, I think this part is another example of kind of a playfulness thing. Like if you only want to make jumps that feel good, or like they have that weavy like smoothness to them, you wouldn't put this jump in your game. But if you're interested in making a jump that looks sort of interesting and might like have the player think and like counter jumps, and that feels like something that actually like kind of feels like a jump you don't do that often, then you might put this in your game. And I'm in the second camp. Like I'm trying to do something different. Okay. Next video I'm gonna say this another 10 times, but I know as a teacher I know that repetition is crucial to, and like saying the same thing in 20 different ways until eventually the idea gets across. But yeah, and this is the end of the stage. I continue like I never went crazy with the gimmicks. I think this is kind of an interesting thing about this game, but maybe more generally how trends develop, I guess. So similar to like if you listen to like very early hip hop albums, or like rap music, like the Sugar Hill Gang, like the what's it called, like blueberry rap or something. Like a lot of that sort of music sounds ridiculous today. Like it's so simplistic. Maybe some people like it, but I think most people feel like the genre has definitely like evolved past that. Like it's an actual evolution in sort of a value laden sense. Like something has improved. And I feel sort of similarly about needle design, in that I used a lot of gimmicks and I did a lot of sort of new stuff in this game, but like a lot of the ideas and the style of gimmicks and the style of design that I used in this game has just been taken farther in subsequent games by other people. It's definitely like people just pushing gimmicks farther, like, and much crazier segments and like with more clever pathing and all of that. And it's just like, you know, back when I made this, like a lot of these things seemed, and they were sort of, I don't know, revolutionary is like a strong word, but they were very innovative, I think. And like by today's standard, they're probably not gonna seem that innovative anymore. Is this like, am I losing my mind, or is the tiling really strange here to my left? I actually like genuinely got distracted by that and lost my train of thought. Fuck. I'm useless. But yeah, the the fucking the meta evolves, and like you have to acknowledge that it's an evolution. But you should also like be respectful of games that paved the way. And like for me, the biggest inspirations, and I mentioned these before, but it's Char. Like that game is antiquated in a lot of regards, but it was also like heavily ahead of its time. But of course, my biggest influence is the Rookido games. But like I don't want to play GR or PYF. I think those games have held up awfully. Like they don't have many things that would make me want to play them at all. RZ and SSR2 have sort of held up. I think those are very playable today. But you still have to recognize and respect that, like, yeah, well, okay, those games might not seem that innovative today, but like back in the day, like holy shit, Rookido was like fucking 5 years ahead of his time at least. Like people are making games as good as SSR2. Like finally today, that is sort of the norm, the standard. Dare I say, among Western makers, maybe primarily. But yeah, back in the day, like everyone else was just making fucking. No one else had a clue what they were doing, in my opinion. But yeah, so like a lot of the use of the gimmicks and stuff here is kind of simplistic. But I also think like since that's also not, it's not really all what this game is about. So I think that this game will still hold up for quite a while before it eventually sort of someone else does what this game does but better. But I have not. I've seen people doing aspects of this game better than this game did, but I think as a whole, with like the sort of immersive world and like the amount of variety, the sense of exploration, the sort of the sub goals of the game, like the little objectives that you complete along the way. The soundtrack, but that's obviously like, of course I'm gonna think that, but yeah, I think some of those games make this game still hold up very well. And those are the stuff the things that I'm proud of the most. Okay, maybe a very rambly video. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Like the time of the day, it's 2:30 a.m. Like maybe I get a little more long-winded and talkative during the late hours. I don't know. But that was very enjoyable. And yeah, I should end the video. Next video I closed the fucking game. Okay. Next video I will head to the blue tower.